Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I continue to bring you the story of Hoài Ca and Hùng. After everything that happened in the previous episode, the lives of Hoài Ca and Hùng seemed to return to their familiar rhythm in the peaceful countryside. Everything continued as it naturally would, slow, simple, yet filled with emotions and quiet thoughts that only those involved could truly understand. After Hùng went to the old woman's house to advise her playful grandson, he felt somewhat relieved when he saw that the boy was willing to listen and promise to change. However, deep down, there was still a lingering concern he could not completely shake off. Hùng understood very well that a child's promise sometimes comes from a momentary emotion, perhaps out of fear of being scolded, or because they were touched by sincere words at that moment. But what truly mattered was not the promise itself, but whether the child could remain determined enough to truly change afterward. And that was exactly what kept lingering in Hung's mind, even though he did not say it out loud. That afternoon, as the sunlight gradually softened over the small village roads, Hùng went to pick Tony up from school. The sight of the boy happily running out, holding his small backpack, made everything feel much lighter. The father and son walked home together, where Hoài Ca had already prepared a simple yet warm meal. Fresh chayote just picked from the garden still held its green freshness. A few leftover yams were skillfully prepared, along with other humble vegetables, creating a meal that was not elaborate but full of love. The whole family sat together, sharing small stories that created a warm atmosphere anyone could feel. During the meal, Hoài Ca glanced at Hùng with concern in her eyes and gently asked him about his earlier visit to the old woman's house. Her question was not rushed, nor was it driven by curiosity. It felt more like a form of sharing, a way to understand what Hùng was thinking. Hùng set his bowl down slightly and slowly recounted everything. From the moment he met the boy, to the words he used to encourage him to change, and even his suggestion that the boy help his grandmother in the garden. Every detail was told calmly, without exaggeration, yet enough for the listener to clearly imagine what had happened. Hoài Ca listened attentively. She did not interrupt, simply following every word as if thinking about something deeper. When Hùng finished, she paused for a moment, then spoke softly, her voice gentle yet thoughtful. I don't think the boy is truly bad. Maybe he just lacks care and attention. Though simple, her words touched exactly what Hùng had been thinking. He nodded slightly, saying nothing more, but his eyes clearly showed agreement. Through his work and life experiences, Hùng understood that children are not born with flawed character. Often, it is their environment, lack of affection, and absence of proper guidance that gradually lead them down the wrong path. The meal continued in a warm atmosphere, yet the thoughts about the boy still lingered in both of their minds. No one spoke further about it, but clearly, that story had not yet come to an end. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the leaves, Hùng took Tony to school as usual. After saying goodbye to his son, he returned home and, together with Hoài Ca, prepared to visit the old man's house to deliver medicine as planned. Everything unfolded naturally as part of their daily routine. However, on the road leading out of the village, as they walked in the quiet of the morning, they suddenly saw the old woman standing by the roadside. That image immediately caught their attention, because her face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, it showed clear and worry. As soon as she saw them, the old woman hurried over, her steps more rushed than usual. Her voice trembled, filled with anxiety she could not hide. Hùng, my grandson left again early this morning. Her words made both Hùng and Hoài Ca pause for a moment. The situation had unfolded too quickly, leaving them unprepared. What Hùng had been worried about seemed to be becoming reality. The old woman continued, her voice still shaking. That morning, She had gone out to the garden early as usual, but when she returned, the boy was nowhere to be found. The house felt empty, his phone was turned off, and there was no way to reach him. The only thing left behind was the hoe Hung had told him to bring to the garden the day before, a small trace of their last conversation. Hearing this, Hoài Ca could not help but feel sympathy. Seeing the old woman standing there with trembling hands and worried eyes, she gently stepped closer and held her hand, trying to comfort her. "Please don't worry too much. He's probably just somewhere around the village." Her words were soft and soothing, meant to ease the old woman's concern. Yet even she herself could not feel completely reassured. As for Hung, he stood silently for a moment, his expression growing more serious. He did not think things were that simple. In his mind, children in the village, especially those without proper supervision, could easily be drawn to places like internet gaming shops near the market. If not stopped in time, such environments could lead them into bad habits, even affecting their future in the long run. That was why this situation troubled Hung even more. The advice he gave the day before, the hope for change, now faced a new challenge. And it seemed that the boy's story had not ended yet, but was opening into another development, one that would require Hung and Hoài Ca to continue facing it and finding a way to resolve it. Without hesitating for even a second, right after hearing the old woman recount what had happened, Hung immediately made a decision. He glanced at Hoài Ca, his eyes clearly showing a mix of concern and determination, then quickly set off with her to find the boy. The familiar dirt road leading to the market seemed longer than usual that day, their steps more hurried, as if carrying the rising urgency in their hearts. They passed through the small paths in the village, where the peaceful atmosphere of the early mornings still lingered. Yet in contrast to that quietness, Hung's mind was anything but calm. Thoughts about the boy kept running through his head, making it impossible for him to slow down. Walking beside him, Hoài Ca did not say much, but her eyes were filled with worry, as she understood that this situation was not as simple as a child casually wandering off to play. As they approached the market area, where more people were beginning to gather, Hung did not hesitate and headed straight toward the small internet gaming shop at the entrance of the village. It was the first place that came to his mind, because he knew very well that many children in the village often gathered there. And just as he had expected, as soon as they got closer, Hung spotted the familiar figure of the boy from a distance. The boy was sitting in front of a screen, the light from it reflecting on his young face, completely absorbed in the game. That sight made Hung pause for a brief moment, not out of surprise, but because what he had feared had now become reality. Standing beside him, Hoài Ca saw it too, her eyes showing a hint of sadness, as if she could feel the helplessness of a child who was not yet mature enough to fully understand what was happening around him. Hung stepped into the shop. Inside, the air was filled with the usual noise of games and electronic sounds. He walked closer, then gently placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. The touch was not strong, but enough to startle him. The boy turned around immediately. When he realized it was Hung standing behind him, fear flashed across his face. His eyes dropped, as if he already knew he had done something wrong. On Hung, his voice softened, trembling slightly. Hung did not raise his voice, nor did he show anger. He simply stood there, looking straight at the boy, his gaze firm yet controlled. After a brief silence, he asked calmly, each word clear. "What did you promise me yesterday?" The question was simple, without emphasis or repetition, yet it left the boy unable to answer right away. He lowered his head, avoiding eye contact, his hands tightening slightly as if blaming himself. That silence lasted only a few seconds, but it said everything. Standing nearby, Hoài Ca saw the scene and did not scold him. Instead, She spoke gently, her voice filled more with care than reproach. "Your grandmother is very worried about you. She thought something had happened to you." Her words were not heavy, yet they touched on something the boy might not have considered. Hearing that, he began to feel uneasy. His face lost its calmness, replaced by clear confusion. His eyes blinked lightly, as if trying to process something, and after a moment, he spoke softly. "I just wanted to play for a little while." It sounded both like an explanation and an attempt to justify his actions. But deep down, even he knew that those words were not enough to make up for what had happened. Hung let out a quiet sigh. He did not want to scare the boy, nor did he want to be overly strict. But he understood that if he did not make things clear now, the boy would easily repeat the same mistake. Looking at him, Hung spoke slowly but firmly. "I'm not forbidding you from playing, but you need to know what truly matters." His words were not loud, yet they carried seriousness. He was not imposing or forcing, he simply wanted the boy to understand. "Your grandmother is at home alone. She's old and weak. You're the only one she has." That sentence was not meant as blame, but as a reminder so the boy could recognize his role. The space around them seemed to slow down in that moment. The noise of the gaming shop was still there, but between the three of them, everything felt quieter. The boy remained silent for a long time. There were no more excuses, no more confusion, only genuine reflection. His shoulders slowly dropped, and his eyes no longer avoided theirs, but became more thoughtful. Finally, he stood up. This time, there was no hesitation. He reached out to turn off the machine, then turned to Hung and Hoài Ca, his voice small but clear. "I'm sorry. I'll go home to my grandma." Though short, his words carried a clear change in his mindset. It was no longer a rushed promise, but a decision that had been thought through. And in that moment, both Hung and Hoài Ca could feel that this time, the boy had truly understood something, even if it was just a small step on his path to change. On the way back, the atmosphere seemed to settle after everything that had just happened. The boy walked quietly behind Hung and Hoài Ca, his steps slow, no longer rushed like before. His head was lowered, his eyes fixed on the ground as if he was thinking about many things. Hung's words in the gaming shop still echoed in his mind, not as blame, but as a reminder that made him reflect on himself. Hung and Hoài Ca did not turn back to urge him, nor did they say anything more. They simply walked ahead, keeping just enough distance to give the boy space to think. The quietness of the village road wrapped around the three of them, and within that silence, there were clear changes happening in the boy's state of mind. As they stepped into the yard, the first thing they saw was the old woman standing at the door. Her small figure, her thin hands clasped tightly together, and her eyes fixed toward the gate, as if she had been waiting for a long time. The moment she saw the familiar figure of her grandson, the worry in her eyes instantly lit up, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her heart. "You're back." Her voice trembled slightly, filled with both relief and emotion. It was a short sentence, yet it carried all the worry she had held inside since the morning. At that moment, the boy no longer hesitated behind them. He quickly stepped forward, walked up to her, and lowered his head. The action needed no reminder. It came from his own awareness. "I'm sorry, Grandma." The apology was soft, but more sincere than anything before. It was not something said just to pass the moment, but a true acknowledgement of his mistake. The old woman looked at him for a long time. There was no blame in her eyes, no anger. Instead, there was gentleness mixed with deep emotion. Slowly, she raised her hand and gently stroked his head. That thin, trembling hand held so much love within it. Her aged eyes reddened slightly, as if she had just held back her tears. But on her face, a relieved smile gradually appeared, a smile of reassurance, of happiness knowing her grandson had returned safely. In that moment, no more words were needed. Everything had already been expressed through actions and feelings. From that day on, the boy's changes were no longer just promises. He began to truly change, little by little, not loudly, not for show, but quietly and persistently. Every morning, he followed his grandmother to the garden, learning how to dig the soil, plant seeds, and water the crops. At first, he was clumsy, but gradually, those movements became more familiar. It did not stop there. He also began taking care of the small flock of chickens in the yard. Those simple tasks helped him understand his grandmother's hardships, as well as the value of things he had once overlooked. From time to time, Hung still stopped by. He did not come to check or remind, but simply observed quietly, sometimes offering a little help. As for Hoài Ca, whenever she harvested vegetables or yams from her garden, she would bring some over to the two of them, a simple yet warm gesture of sharing. As time passed, those changes became more visible. The small garden, once neglected, gradually turned green again. Rows of vegetables grew neatly in straight lines, their leaves fresh and vibrant under the sunlight. A few chickens ran around the yard, creating a lively and full of life scene. Every afternoon, when the work was done, the boys' laughter could be heard again in the yard. This time, it was no longer the carefree laughter of electronic games, but the genuine joy of working and being connected to the simple things around him. One afternoon, when Hung and Hoài Ca came by as usual, the old woman stood in the yard, looking at them with deep gratitude. She did not need to say much. One glance was enough to express everything she felt. "It's thanks to you two that he has changed like this." Her voice was slow and sincere, filled with emotion she could not hide. Hung simply smiled gently. He did not take credit because he understood that the change came from the boy himself. Hoài Ca softly replied, her voice as gentle as always. In truth, he just needed a chance. That simple sentence carried a deep meaning. Sometimes, people do not need something grand, just the right opportunity, and a sincere act of care can be enough to change a person completely. As the sunset slowly spread across the small village, it bathed everything in a soft golden light. In that final glow of the day, the image of the old woman, the boy, Hoài Ca, and Hung standing together created a scene of warmth and peace. Nothing extraordinary, yet in that simplicity lay something truly meaningful. Sometimes in life, just a timely word or a small act born from sincerity can create great change. And it is these seemingly ordinary things that make the story of Hoài Ca and Hung grow deeper, more relatable, and more meaningful over time. Stay tuned for the next episode to see what happens next.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video về câu chuyện của Hoài Ca nhé mọi người. Hôm nay thì mình đưa đến phần tiếp theo về câu chuyện của Hoài Ca. Như mọi người cũng đã biết là Hùng đang giúp cho bà não có thể răn dạy được cậu cháu trai đang trong cái tuổi mà nổi loạn đó mọi người. Cái tầm tuổi này thì rất là khó bảo, tại vì thứ nhất là suy nghĩ chưa có trưởng thành, và thứ hai là sự tò mò và khó bảo. Thì do bà lão cũng già rồi nên là không thể nói được cậu bé, vì cậu không nghe thì đã nhờ đến Hùng. Bây giờ thì hôm nay thì là một video khá là cảm động khi mà Hùng và Hoài Ca đã giúp cho cậu bé có thể nhận ra được ý nghĩa của cuộc sống, cũng như là sự vĩ đại của người bà của mình, cũng như là sự vất vả của bà. Vậy hành trình tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào thì mọi người nhớ đón xem ở phần tiếp theo và ủng hộ cho Hoài Ca và Hùng, cũng như là ủng hộ cho kênh của mình nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong video sau. Bye bye.